people. And I pray that you will pray for them. If ever there was a time in the church, and I'm not just talking about this church, but when I say the church, I'm talking about the church of Christ, the Lord's church. If ever was a time we need to be reaching young people, it's now. For every day, Satan is taking another child down a terrible road. That road, of course, can be drugs. That road can be crime. That road can be unwed mothers. I mean, we just see this going on and on and on. And folks, you know, we need to step up like we've never stepped up before as Christians and as parents and as leaders in the church, and reach out with love to these children, whether they be related to us physically or not. In Proverbs 31, it says this, if you've got it, verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed. I want to talk to you about the value of raising kids that are godly today. Several years ago, they did an actual survey. I tried to find it here and on the internet, couldn't find it. But they had researched 2 families that had grown up in New York. Both these families had lived within a 10-mile radius of each other. I believe they were in the Manhattan area or Long Island. The one father was an alcoholic, very abusive to his kids, abusive to his wife. He had 8 children. Of those 8 children, 7 of them had already grown up to be alcoholics, or by this time drug dependents. And all of those 7 children had been in prison, except for one who sadly got killed in a bar fight, was shot or stabbed one, and sadly lost his life. This other family, like I said, lived 10 miles from these people. They didn't know them. But their family, the father and the mother, both were good, devout, God-fearing people. They took their kids to church. They took them to Sunday school. They took them to Sunday night service. They took them to Wednesday night service. They took them to VBS. You know, we used to say jokingly, you've heard us say this, that, you know, I always said I was on drugs growing up. My mother drugged me to VBS. She drugged me to Sunday school. She drugged me to Sunday night service. I remember Wild Kingdom come on Sunday night, and Disney World. You know, Walt Disney would come, and I'd say, Mama, can't we stay home and watch Walt Disney tonight? And, of course, you know, we didn't have the conveniences of having recorded television like you can today. I hear people say, well, I can't miss my show. Well, they can record it, can't they? I mean, whether it's sports or whatever. And Mama would say, well, hey, Walt Disney didn't die for you on the cross. And, you know, we're not going to miss church. And I'd say, well, Mama, we went to church Sunday morning. Well, that didn't matter to Mama. They had church on Sunday night somewhere, and we went. And then we would go to Wednesday night church. And folks, when I grew up in church, maybe you remember this, they didn't have youth church and teen church and junior church and all this stuff. We'd sit there with the adults. Now you say, well, that sounds boring. But you know what? We learned a lot sitting there with our families and with our grandparents and great-grandparents. I probably can't remember a lot of the sermons that I grew up and heard my uncles and different ones preach. But I can tell you, obviously, it made an impact on my life. This family in New York raised their kids in church. 2 of their sons became United States senators. The other 4 children became school teachers, judges, doctors, and people who were a great asset to society. The other family had cost the state of New York almost $500,000 then in keeping up their children because of the system they were on and the fact that they were in prison, incarcerated. You know, you kids, do you know it costs money to keep a man or a woman in jail? It costs taxpayers a lot of money, don't it? What is it? Charlie, you used to work at jails. What was the cost? Do you remember what they said? A lot of money, though, wasn't it? I remember somebody said a state penitentiary was $50,000 a year to keep a prisoner incarcerated. That means in jail at a state penitentiary. Kids, you could go to the finest school in America for $50,000 a year almost. That's the truth, can't you? And so, sadly, the family that was raised out of church, even from a financial point of view, had cost the state of New York a lot of money. Where the other family was raised in church, and they had become a great asset by even just paying taxes of what they was honestly making a living on. Well, Jesus had a plan, and here's what it says here. And somebody wrote this, and I like this. It said, one parent said, I pay for my boy's clothes, I feed him, I give him allowance. What do you expect? And I like what this preacher wrote here. He said, many parents don't even realize that's just the start of raising a child. First of all, I think if you're going to be a parent, and I've been a parent, been a grandparent now, you need to spend time with these children. Would you believe that? Kids, let me ask you a question. Would you rather your mom and dad, if they had lots of money, just give you lots and lots and lots of presents constantly, or would you rather them spend time with you? See, listen to that. They said spend time. You know, kids are little people. Did you know that? Kids are little people. And don't you like to spend time with people? Especially people that like you? Huh? Don't you like to spend time with your sweetie and your honey if they like you? Now, if they're mad at you, you may not want to do that. I like spending time with my wife. You know, she was helping at camp last week, and that was wonderful. But I wasn't able, as you know, to be here because of my surgery. And I'll tell you, I missed her. I was in that house by myself, except for Ralphie. And I enjoyed Ralphie's company, but I'm going to tell you, his kisses ain't as good as my wife's kisses. I'm just being honest. I mean, he could smooch, but she could smooch. You see, you like to spend time with people who like you, don't you? Whether it's your mate or somebody else, your friends. You know, you enjoy that, don't you? I'm serious. I told my daughter, if she didn't get in high gear and have me some more grandbabies, I don't know what I'm going to do. I did, because I said that little girl needs somebody to play with. Now, I enjoy playing with her, and Cheryl does too, but you know what I'm trying to say. She needs somebody that she can relate to. Desi grew up in a large family. There's a lot of positive things with large families, aren't they? It may not be a lot of money, but you had each other to fuss and fight and argue, as well as learn to get along, don't you? You learn a lot of social skills. So parents need to spend time with their children. Secondly, they need to give their children ideals for living. Has your mom or dad ever talked to you about what you want to do when you grow up? Have you ever said to your child, what would you like to do? Or your grandchildren? What would you like to do? Well, you know, and today with our technology, a kid can do anything today. And now with school online, you can become about anything you want to do. You really can. I encourage everybody in this room to go home and rent the movie October Sky. I've always said it's one of the best movies I've ever seen, based on a true story of 4 boys who grew up in a coal town. Now, Randy here spent his life under the mines. Tell him how deep you went one time. 5 miles underneath the ground he worked. Now, God bless him. That's a hard job, too. That's a hard job being a miner. And these boys wanted to, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But these boys said, hey, you know, maybe we could be something else. And of all the people, it was a school teacher who believed in these boys that they could be more than just a coal miner. Not that there was anything wrong with that. But I want you to know, I want you to dream, kids, what you want to do. You could be a physician. You could. You could be a great judge.
Transform the roof on your home, church, or business into this. A 5-rib metal panel roof from Dry Home Roofing, a Christian-owned roofing company specializing in metal roofing and gutters. We install 29 and 26 gauge metal roofing with a 40-year warranty and a 2-year labor warranty. Our patented end cap helps to prevent wind damage and control water flow off the end of the roof. For your free estimate, contact Dry Home Roofing to transform your roof today.
You can do anything you want to do. I think a godly parent talks to their kids about giving them ideals of what they would like to do for a living. But, you know, I tell the true story about my brother dealing with a kid. I was telling this to Marilyn, and I've told this before. My brother taught school all of his life. And he's coached all of his life. And he had this kid that was failing a couple of years ago. I said last year, but I think it's 2 years ago. And he sits the kid down, and he said, look, you're failing. And you're about to graduate high school, and if you don't pass my class, you can't graduate. And the kid had made C's and D's in his other, grades. And so my brother was trying to help him. He said, listen, I've talked to the principal. If you will come in on my period off, high school teachers usually have a period off that they do their grading and all that. He said, I will tutor you. And I promise you, if you try, my brother, I think, taught social studies or something, or economics. He said, if you try, I'll give you a D, and at least you can pass high school and go on with your life. And the kid was, man, that's great, Mr. Banks. That's what I want to do. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to have to take high school again. He said, I'll just drop out before I come back next year. So my brother said, but you've got to finish out the next 4 months of putting a class in my class. So what would you like to do with yourself for the next 4 months? The kid said, I want to draw. So what did my brother think? Well, I'll put you in art class. Absolutely. I'll get the art teacher right. Well, I didn't know you liked to draw. So the kid looked at my brother and said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to draw. He said it again. So my brother's thinking, are you talking about mechanical drawing? And he thought, boy, that's a hard class to take because my dad taught that for years before he became a principal. No, Mr. Banks, what are you talking about? Drawing on the computers, learning maybe a graphics or something? No. I want to draw. So now my brother, who has taught school for 30-some years and coached for 30-some years, and my brother ain't a dumb kid. My brother graduated the valedictorian of his class. He's confused. So he said, son, I have no idea what you mean by drawing. What do you want to take to draw? He said, I want to be like my granny, and I want to draw a check the rest of my life. His life goal at 18 was to get on welfare and somehow con the government into sending him a check every month. Now, isn't this sad? See, that tells me somebody didn't talk to this kid to say, you could do anything you want to do. And the kid wasn't done. He was a little lazy. But I think a good parent talks to their child or grandchildren and say, what would you like to do? And encourage them to do that. I think, thirdly, then a good child should see a good example. Do you believe that? Now, I'm telling you, we tried very hard, me and Cheryl, to set a good example. She certainly set a better example than I did, and that's not just being honest, it's being honest. Sometimes when I was young, I was, hot-tempered, and I just didn't have the time, and I'd just jump on them a little bit, but she was more patient, and I'm sure they saw a better example at many times of being a good parent than maybe I did. But I did set a good example from my children. My children never saw me drunk. My children never saw me high on drugs. My children never saw me beat on their mother or withhold money from them. Lord, if I'd had all the money that I've spent on my children like you have. Think of the money we'd have, folks. Huh? But we didn't care to do that because we loved our children. And we tried to set a good example. I taught, and Cheryl taught our children to learn God's Word. Thy Word I will hide in my heart. That means you try to put the Bible literally down inside you, because the more you know God's Word, listen kids, the less mistakes you'll make. We taught our kids not to lie. Why is it important to teach children not to lie? Anybody? Well, if you tell lies, who can believe you anything that you say? And if you're known as a liar, well, people have no faith in you, do they? Because they say, well, you can't trust what she says or he says. They'll lie to you. We taught our kids not to steal. Did you know that? Not to steal. I told our kids, and being a youth minister didn't make a lot of money. And school teachers then didn't make a lot of money. I mean, we made a good living, but we didn't have tons and tons of money. And my kids would wear hand-me-downs. People in church would donate clothes, and I was thrilled to death because I grew up wearing hand-me-downs. It didn't bother me. It didn't hurt my feelings, And we didn't mind that, but we taught our children to be honest. Listen. There's no shame of being poor. Because I swear to God, if you was any poorer than me growing up, you were poor. But there's every shame of being dishonest and untrustworthy. I don't have to steal today. I don't have to take something out of somebody else, because I was taught that a thief can't go to heaven. And a thief will get you in trouble with the law, won't you? So we tried our very best to set a good example. We told our children to be kind and respectful. Kids, do you say yes, sir, and no, sir? Do you say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am? We taught our children to say that to teachers and to any adult, any kid, anybody that was older than you. We taught our children to be respectful. I remember the first Sunday we came to church here, and my mother had come and lived with us now. Most Sunday mornings, Cheryl would ride beside me, and the kids would be behind her in the van or car. Now, here's how the sitting arrangement went. My mother's now living with us. My mother sit in the front seat, and Cheryl sit in the back seat, or I sit in the back seat with the children. Because, you see, we were teaching them, this is your grandmother. You respect her. She's older. You let her have the best seat. Because we were taught to respect elderly people. Did you know that? Not just teachers and police officers, people who were trying to help you. We were taught to respect official leaders. I'm serious. I am totally shocked today how we talk about the President of the United States. And I'm not just talking about this presidency, but how we've been talking about the last 10 presidencies. No wonder the children today don't have respect for them, because we talk about them awful. I'm dead serious. We were taught as children, that's the president, whether you like him or not, you respect him. That's the governor. You respect them. That's the leaders. You respect them. But you see, today, kids aren't getting this. And then we wonder why they don't respect anybody. And then we taught our children, listen, to respect us. But if you're not living an example in front of them, listen to me, I don't care what you say. I remember as a youth minister, I had a parent come in, having trouble with her son. And finally the boy sit there and said, well, you know where I get my dope? He was 15 years old. I said, no, son, where do you get your dope? He said, from my mom and dad. Now I thought to myself, he's not being honest. So his mother was sitting in the church here while I was talking to him in my office, and I said, go get your mama now. And he went and got her. And I said, now I'm going to tell you what your boy just told me. That he smokes your dope, and he gets your dope and smokes it, at the house from you and your husband? And she said, he does. I didn't even know how to answer it. Huh? You know, we had a physician one time, this is the truth, a medical doctor, that he brought his daughter in here, and at 14 years old, girls, anybody here 14 years old? These girls got a birthday. Sadly, this 14-year-old girl was a full-blown alcoholic to the point that she was having shakes. We call it the DTs. It's a gospel truth. Her father, who was a medical doctor, said to Joel and me, you know what ticks me off about her? She drinks my good liquor instead of the cheap stuff. Now, I don't think that's funny. And I tell you the truth, it was hard for me to contain myself, and I really wanted to wipe his smile off his face. To think you are that kind of a sorry man as a physician, that your daughter is already a drunk, and all you're upset about is that she drinks your good liquor. I would be ashamed. I would be brokenhearted if my children at 14 was a drunk and I'd have made that statement. But you see, parents today aren't thinking about this. Listen, and it's probably because they weren't raised this way. We're passing on generations. But I think a good parent always sets a good example. In other words, they put their career on halt to be with that child. I think a good parent is a person that disciplines their children and gives them activities and directions. Now, neither one of my kids played sports like I did, and that's okay. But I'll promise you, anything that they were involved in, me and Cheryl tried our best to be there all the time. Whether it was spelling bee, my son won the spelling bee at his school. And so he goes to the county finals. He walks up there. Remember, Cheryl? He had a Hawaiian shirt on. He was trying to look Mr. Cool. What grade was he in? Sixth grade. And my mother, again, was living with us, and she's sitting right beside me. And they gave him a word. You can tell him I told this on him. The word was what? Volley. You know how you volley, like a ball or hit it, volley it? And bless his heart, he was so nervous he misspelled it. And when they did, ding. And my mother took the defense. Well, anybody ought a second chance. And she's saying this out loud in front of hundreds of people, you know. Well, I missed a word when I was a child, and I taught science and chemistry. And I'm trying to calm my mother down, who's trying to take the defense for her grandson because he missed a word. But we were there. That's the point. God bless the parents who went to their kids' soccer games or their kids' volleyball games or basketball or baseball games or cheerleading, whatever. God bless them who went to the science projects, who spent time and cut out their precious time because that child was more important. Again, how many times that she used to call me when she was a principal kid. You know, my wife was a principal for years. And she would always have grandparents and parents' days, and they'd have a breakfast, whether it's at Socastee or PD. And she'd say, can you come over and sit with this child because they have no parent? You think that don't make a mark on that kid? Kids look around, don't they? And I think if you care about these children and you love them, you will be the greatest cheerleader in their life. Grandparents, you need to be the cheerleader for these children's life. You need to encourage them. They hear enough negativity from the world. They hear enough people say, you ain't going to be nothing. If I had a dime for everybody that ever went to the Promised Land, and over 11,000 people been through there, and that's a lot. And if I had a dime for every person, adult, would say to me, you know, my dad told me I was a loser all my life. My mother hated me and prayed that I was dead and wished I was gone. You know, you can really discourage a child with just words. You need to think about what you're saying to your kid. You see? And you need to be the cheerleader. You know. When Roy graduated from college, kids, do you see Roy over here? Do you know Roy graduated from college? Do you know he was voted Student of the Year at his campus? But I said, when he won the award, and we were there, cheering him on, I said, his mother deserved an award just as much as he did. For she loved him. She drove him back and forwards to college every day of her life and worked with that. Now, she deserved a degree as much as he did. Somebody say amen. Amen. And I'm going to tell you, it ain't hard to raise godly kids if you will do these things and if you will pray over your children. When's the last time you prayed over your grandchildren, your children? And said, oh God, protect them. Watch after them. Not just keep them safe from the physical harm, but keep them safe from the devil who would do more harm than anybody in this world is Satan. Listen, he hates these children. And we need to pray over these kids. And so as time runs out tonight, I want you to pray for the camp. Pray that these people, God will speak through them to reach these kids. You listen to me. Every child that we can reach for Christ is a child that one day won't knock your door in trying to kill you. Don't you understand this? That's the seriousness of this. You say it doesn't affect me what children do. Yes, it does. Because children grow up and they become either peaceful, God-loving young adults and adults, or they become angry children. And you know, I want them to grow up and kids, they would be nothing more happier in my life to hear that one day when you're adults that you're raising your kids in church. That you're loving God and you're teaching them the values that you have learned. And I promise you this much, folks. It's not impossible to raise godly kids even in an ungodly world. If it would be so, Christ would not teach us to do